today. And the interesting thing, what I was going to talk about, I am going to touch base on it, but I had a lot of questions around how can I build a relationship, of course, for myself first, because that is the number one. How can you become a valued member of your inner circle? And then when we haven't done so well in our relationships, what are some type of maybe coaching questions that you could ask yourself so you could work through something that didn't go as well? And as I said earlier, what I'm talking about in the professional environment, this also a lot of what I've talked about applies to you. Personally, you can use a lot of what I've spoken about in your personal relationships and your friendship relationships. So it is an accumulation of all the years I have worked with folks, 10,000 folks really in the last 20 years, whether they're teams or individuals or partnerships or, couples, work situations, whatever, is really, it comes down to the relationship on so many things. And people that build and sustain great relationships also know how to do with that with themselves first, so they can monitor their part of the responsibility in a relationship, whether that's professional or personal. So I just want to touch base again, what we talked about in day one. I'll just take a few minutes and recap. So day one was all about, building and sustaining those relationships and why that's important, especially in our environment moving forward. So many people train others, so many trainings, so many coaching programs say, it's so important to build relationships. And when I work with partnerships or my individual CEO entrepreneurs, there seems to be, yes, I know how to do this, but I don't spend enough time doing it. And then it becomes a little rushed for them, or all of a sudden they don't have what they want. And one of the things I talked about is to really think through the types of different categories of relationships in your business environment that you have now, that you want to build and sustain even further, and new ones that you want to bring on, which are so important. Folks are here, even professionally, sometimes for a month, sometimes for years, sometimes for a season. You just never know. But you would never figure that out unless you build the relationship yourself. And one of the things I talked about on day one was that there are two main principles. Number one, you go first in building relationships. And the second one, never have the situation or the content of the conversation have more importance than the relationship. And in a professional setting, sometimes if you are talking to folks that should be your clients, sometimes we allow the relationship to overcome that we should have asked them to come and be a client of ours. So there's got to be balance around that, especially when it's in a sales conversation, bringing on new clients, speaking to potential clients. So just think that through and know when. It really doesn't matter in any relationship. There needs to be a balance of that. And when there's not a balance, number one, that's when it feels sleazy to other people. And number two, they'll hang up from the conversation or get off Zoom, a text message, and go, gosh, I thought we were going to talk about this. And so they're left confused. Confused people don't buy, and people that feel like you've been sleazy around asking them to work with you because you made the content of the sale itself more important than them, then that's when that sets up. And so those relationships you really do need to work well on and take some of the points of the framework, which I talked about on Tuesday, like how to truly care, how to truly value, how to take a real genuine interest, how to be present, how not to be ahead of the conversation. And as an example, I said, when I had my professional psychotherapy practice and when I have trained other coaches and consultants is how to be in the present moment with the conversation that you're having that right then and there, and not get ahead of what you want to say next and what you think is the resolution in the moment. Because when you stay in the present moment, you allow that person to actually go through their process on what they're deciding, whether that's to work with you or to have a partnership with you, to be a referral source, whatever it is, and feel really good that they're coming to their own conclusion around that. When you cut that off in the middle of not being present, just your energy, you divert that in their mind in what they're thinking about, and you have lost the full potential of what that moment, what that conversation could be like. So really important to think about. A couple of other things I'm just looking, I wrote them down to make sure I remember. You want to build on the relationship because what? Language matters, and you do that with your language and your words. There are so many nuances around language that can make or break a relationship. My philosophy has always been that you can talk to anyone about anything as long as the words are appropriate and the energy around it, the chemistry around it is appropriate for that situation. Your words matter so much in building a relationship. It's you, if I'm just going to give an example on a personal note, how many times have you said something to a spouse or a child or a family member and your words had seemed innocuous and yet your energy behind it made them interpret that as defensive? And so I'm talking about that. I'm talking about understanding that when you use language and you use your energy in a conversation, that people don't interpret it from your lens, they interpret it from their lens. And so they want to be heard. So if you want to get something across or you want to build that relationship or you're in a sales conversation, what happens is you have to remember to speak in such a way that they hear it the way you want it heard. Really important. The other piece we talked about was influence and how to have high emotional IQ, how to have self-mastery over emotions, self-mastery of the conversation, self-mastery of how to interpret other people's emotions. Sometimes you don't get it right, but it's don't make an assumption, ask a question. And when you're trying to figure that out, always ask a simple question that is organized in such a way to elicit more information than the person anticipated giving you. I love the compliment when I do ask those simple questions because I take it as a compliment. Gosh, I didn't think I would tell you all this. It's because I'm showing genuine interest. I'm present in the moment, and I've asked a very simple question, 3 or 4 words that elicits information not only for me to know, but for them to realize that that's what they should tell me because it's important. And it just furthers a relationship, even in the business environment. So day 3 was all about making sure that you are aware that you want to surround yourself in your inner circle. It's important to have an inner circle and have relationships there that are comprised of people that really want you to win, to be successful, and for you to want that for them. It's not a one-way street. Relationships are not a one-way street. And so many times, because we want something, we desire something, we go after what we want, but we don't give what one of the most human tenets out there is the balance of give and receive. Human beings love that, even though sometimes on social media, it doesn't seem that way. And we get out of balance by giving too much and then resenting. And because we're not getting anything in return, or we take so much that the other person is not happy with us. So really remember that your inner circle is comprised of people that They want you to be successful, and that you can tell them things you may not tell others because you need feedback on that. It's really hard to see yourself exactly on who you are. And so when one of the other pieces around relationships is how to inspire without going over the top, and loving people and truly caring and not going over the top, because that energy of going over the top sometimes pushes people back. And I know some of you are more enthusiastic than others because that is part of your personality, but there is some self-mastery of how to show that enthusiasm in the right way with the right people, and when it's appropriate to give it over the top because it's called for. It's always about what it's called for, not what just about you. And you've got to remember that. Of course, when you are inspiring, you also want to understand that the people you're going to be in partnership with, the type of clients you want, are all about people you enjoy, and it's about their character, their competency, and it is about the chemistry between the two of you or the three of you or whatever it is. And so remember that. And of course, that again, I'm going to say it because it's important: emotional self-management, how to be self-motivated, how to have good boundaries. Relationships require good boundaries, and the boundaries are different depending on the type of relationship, and how to manage your relationships. All really important, because over the years, over the last 20 years or so, I've seen more people derail themselves personally in their relationships and then take it over and do the same thing in their professional lives. There is very little wall between the personal and the professional. So you want to do not find yourself having the inability to project interpersonal problems onto your professional relationships and vice versa, because that's about you. That is you projecting out something that is not there. And so many people do this. They're not even aware because they don't have self-mastery of their emotions. And that's what's important. And if you've heard any of my other training, trainings that I do, one of the things I really talk about is your thoughts, your emotions, and your actions have to be in alignment. And when the emotions are ahead of it, there's projection. When your thoughts are ahead of it, and you don't have the right emotion, then there's a tendency to sabotage yourself. If your thoughts and emotions are aligned, but you don't do the action, then nothing gets done. So it even goes here. Everything around that is here, and building relationships and building the context for the different types of relationships you want in your business. And another thing where people derail themselves, not in relationships, when they're under stress, and when they can't handle conflict. You are conflict avoidant, and conflict avoidant people, it's been my experience, the research supports it. What you and I, if you're not a conflict avoidant person, so it's not that I'm looking for conflict, but if I feel where I'm out of whack with somebody, I am going to bring it up in a gentle way so we can have a conversation. But if you're conflict avoidant, you actually cause more conflict, and you seek conflict where there is no conflict. I don't know how many times I've heard a story from somebody, whether it's when I had my therapy practice or when I was working with leaders. And now what I do now is someone say something to me, and I'm just feeling it's just part of the conversation, or they're reporting back or whatever we're doing. And they go, well, can't you see what happened? And I don't see it. When I hear that, that is a projection. You took your feelings and you projected it out onto me. because there's something bothering you. Now we have something to talk about, but I'm not going to be conflict avoidant and I'm going to ask about that. I'm not going to say, oh, yeah, we could talk about that some other time. Passive aggressive people really cause themselves so many problems. Passive aggressive entrepreneurs cause a lot of upheaval in their business and a lot of upheaval with their clients and all their other relationships because they do not have good boundaries and they're unwilling to talk about the thing that they should be talking about. So we don't want you derailing yourself. All right, so day 4, I gave you some practical ways you can ask questions to build on the relationship, no matter what category it falls in. And I talked to you about simple questions, like my favorite, tell me more. What's going on? What's important about this? What defines blank? What works? All these simple questions. And I think I gave 20. And so go back to training day number 4, and you will have those 20 questions there. They're really useful in so many conversations. So the types of questions I have gotten really were basic questions up to day 3. And that's why I did the questions on day 4 to give you some practical ways to build relationship with language, because that's how we build relationships. We start with our language. It's where we build trust, how we recreate people knowing we have their back. All those things, those questions are important, and they're meant to give you have the ability to do that. But what about some coaching questions? Like that, those were the questions I got. How about if I'm already in a mess with a relationship? What can I do for myself? What types of tough questions should I ask around me being maybe the central problem of the relationship and you want to get out of that? So I jotted down, I didn't look at the questions until this morning, but I jotted down about 4 or 5 questions you can ask yourself around this. So this is more for you in publishing, for you to coach yourself with these questions so you can help yourself with any type of relationship that's gone off the rails, whether it's a little bit, whether it's a lot. And you can use it in business and in your personal life. And I just think that that's important with the types of questions I got. So the first question, I'm just going to read this question because I hadn't expected to do this, but what relationship do you need to shore up that matters a lot to you? I would do a small exercise here. I would make a list, even if it's just a little thing. You kind of know when something's not quite right, or you want to advance the relationship even more and it feels kind of stuck. So what relationships do you need to shore up? And to be really truthful, one of the things about coaching other people, being a strategist, consulting with companies and small teams is that most people have a difficult time being honest with themselves with the answers they give. And the more honest you are with yourself, the better you can get in building the relationships. If you are really honest around which ones do you really need to shore up. And even if you don't know why, it's not quite as important. So start with that list. Here's the other one. How prone are you to damage long-term relationships? And how can you change to break that unhealthy pattern? This pattern I see a lot. And there's all kinds of versions of it. It can be, oh man, we got along great. I had first conversation. We had our second conversation. It does not matter, professionally or personally. And things go really well, really quick. And then it feels too much for you. And in some ways you start sabotaging it. This happens all the time. Because when people get too close fast, we see it in our intimate lives, too close fast, there's got to be a pause. And this actually happens even in business relationships. You find someone that's going to make a great partnership with this project and you're going to go into business together. It happens so quickly. And then it feels overwhelming. So one of you is going to sabotage something to give this relationship a break because you went too fast. And we all get caught up with this. So it's not a judgment of doing that, but to understand what could be happening. And if you're aware of that as you meet someone, that there's this instant connection to work together, to partner, a client, and it just kind of goes over the top relationships, and they run out of gas. And it's hard for humans to remember that in the moment. And so there's usually someone says something that gives you a red flag, or you just didn't settle right. And is it enough to sabotage what maybe could have been a really good long-term relationship in business? And so you have to kind of think about that. And so look at the relationships that in your business that you, maybe wish it hadn't gone that way, and see if there's a pattern of you being the one sabotaging relationships. Sometimes when I've seen this a lot with coaches and consultants, it's unconscious when they have needy clients, and that needy client just gets so needy. And instead of, having good boundaries, which would be the first thing I would tell you to do, there's something that's said, or a phone call not answered, or whatever the situation is, and it really sabotages the client. And those are the ones sometimes that got out there and trash you. We don't want that. So make sure you have good boundaries. All right. And so here's the third coaching question I would ask someone. Under what circumstances does a relationship legitimately become less important than the situation? So let me repeat that again. Under what circumstances does a relationship legitimately become less important than the situation? That could be anything. It could be in a sales call when you figure out they are not a right fit client. They're going to buy a $97 product, and you're going to find out they want $5,000 service. Do not ignore those red flags. That's what this is talking about. At some point, sometimes it is legitimately okay to make the situation more important than the relationship, because they're not a good fit. That's what that's talking about. I talked about it differently in day 3 and day 4 about making sure when it's a sales conversation that there's balance. There are times there should not be a long-term relationship or a client or even anything. And it's okay to make the situation more important at that point. How have you been able to repair an important relationship in the last 6 to 12 months? Sometimes it doesn't even need an apology because you should have let them go sooner. But there was some form of unconscious sabotage. So it has stopped, and it should have stopped. But if there's something that is a relationship that you feel that on your part, you should apologize, don't be afraid to do it. And be okay if they don't accept it. Do your part. One of those principles I talked about from day 1 is you go first. It's always that way in building and sustaining relationships. Now, with you apologizing, if you don't get an appropriate answer, it's time, just move on. Just say, okay, thank you, move on. And then what can you do going forward to improve or restore a relationship? These are more personal coaching questions for you if you are in a place where you need to do these things. But I had quite a few people ask me some version of what questions could they ask about themselves. And the only way to know if this is true for you is to be honest with yourself. But they're good questions to write down to contemplate, because it's people being involved, and a lot of coaches, consultants, strategists, um, don't want to admit that, maybe they could have done more, and maybe they the ones that need to apologize, because we usually put ourselves in a position of authority unconsciously, because we have the information, we're the expert, when really it should be more of a collaboration. A lot of times, sometimes they pay you to give advice, but they also want that to happen in some form of a collaboration where you still are the expert, but that you didn't ram it down someone's throat and they don't feel like you collaborated in the moment. So sometimes being an expert, it can work against you and with relationships, and when to pull that back. Again, it's the nuances of the dance and the weave of in and out, and knowing people well, what normal human beings or what entrepreneurial human beings do, and you understand that mastery of what's going on for them and what's going on for yourself, so you can do a great job. And that's what that's about, because building relationships will keep your business sustained for a longer period of time than any other business building tool technique you can do, because people remember how you make them feel, and people know that you made the effort, and that's what they want to know. So also yesterday, I invited you to our Alchemy Leadership Mastermind. It's for a community of people that want to really reflect on their leadership from a whole person position, and to have people there that can not only support them, but you can support them also, and you can get those next big steps, those leaps that you are here to do as an entrepreneurial leader, and to understand all aspects of yourself, because it affects everything. You can't separate them. So if you want the details of that, just let me know. You can email me, you can message me, you can make a comment, and I'll be glad to get that to you. And we'll spend 15 minutes seeing if it's a right fit for you, because that's always what I'm looking for. I really enjoyed talking about relationships in the context of business, and how to be a master of relationships in your business. So not just as a technique, but it's a genuine way of being in this world as an entrepreneurial leader. Thank you for attending all 5 days. Thank you for the questions I got. I hope this was helpful, and I look forward to June's monthly training, and we will let you know soon what that will be about. Have a wonderful day. Bye for now.